an elusive creature.
See what I'm saying?
From Bigfoot spotted in Colorado Canyon to the vocalizations of a supposed Bigfoot to a trail camera recording from 2025 showing a clear Bigfoot walking in a forest. These are the top recent clear recordings of the legendary Bigfoot. This is the footage of a supposed Bigfoot sighting from a moving train in Colorado mountains.
Down. Yeah, let me see your camera, I'll do it.
There's been many news over this sighting, many people claiming it is the most recent, believable, clear footage of Bigfoot. This is the reimagined story of someone on that train in Colorado mountains. I boarded the narrow-gauge railway in Durango at 8 a.m. for a scenic autumn ride through the San Juan Mountains. The train climbed steadily through golden aspens and dark pines, following the Animas River into higher elevations. By 9:30 a.m., we had reached nearly 9,000 feet, and the landscape opened up into rocky slopes with sparse vegetation. That's when I saw something that changed everything. Through my camera's zoom lens, I spotted a large, dark figure moving across a barren hillside about 200 yards from the tracks. At first, I thought it was a bear, but the Bigfoot was walking upright with a smooth, purposeful stride. The Bigfoot navigated the treacherous rocky terrain with ease, and when the Bigfoot paused and seemed to look directly at the train, I started recording video. The Bigfoot was massive, easily 7 or 8 feet tall, covered in dark brown or black fur. The Bigfoot's arms swung naturally as the Bigfoot walked, and the Bigfoot's movements were too fluid and deliberate to be a bear on its hind legs. I captured 90 seconds of shaky footage before the train rounded a bend. My heart pounded as I replayed the video. That was no bear, that was no hiker. The way the Bigfoot moved, the size, the proportions, everything pointed to something I couldn't explain. For 30 minutes, I couldn't stop replaying the video. When the train stopped at Needleton, a tiny wilderness platform where backpackers access the remote Weminuche Wilderness, I made a split-second decision. As the conductor called the final boarding warning, I grabbed my day pack and jumped off. The next train wouldn't return until 3 p.m., 4.5 hours to find what I'd seen. I was wearing jeans and a light jacket, carrying only snacks, water, and my camera. Not exactly prepared for tracking Bigfoot in the Colorado Rockies, but I was committed now. The train pulled away, leaving me standing alone on a wooden platform in the middle of nowhere. I headed northeast toward the rocky slopes where I'd seen the Bigfoot, following no trail, just scrambling over loose rocks and scrub. The altitude hit me hard. At 9,000 feet, every breath felt thin, my legs burned from the climb, and within 20 minutes I was sweating despite the cold wind. The landscape was harsh and beautiful. Stunted pines clung to the mountainside, twisted by years of wind. Jagged peaks rose in the distance, still holding patches of snow. This was prime Bigfoot country, remote, rugged, and largely untouched by humans. Within 40 minutes of hard climbing, I found them. Tracks, enormous tracks pressed deep into muddy ground near a spring. They were 18 inches long with 5 clear toes, far deeper than my boot prints even when I jumped with all my weight. Whatever made these weighed 600 pounds or more. I photographed the Bigfoot tracks from every angle, my hands trembling. Each toe showed what looked like dermal ridges. The stride length was enormous, easily 4 feet between prints. The Bigfoot tracks led uphill toward a grove of stunted pines. As I climbed higher, I found more evidence. Branches, broken at 7 or 8 feet high, snapped cleanly. Tufts of dark hair caught on bark. Massive handprints on boulders where the Bigfoot had balanced on the steep slope. Near the spring, I discovered tracks from multiple Bigfoot creatures, different sizes, suggesting a family group. This wasn't one Bigfoot passing through, there was a population living here. As I approached the pine grove, the hair on my neck stood up. I felt eyes on me. The forest had gone silent. No birds, no wind, nothing. Every instinct screamed that I was being observed. I started recording video again, panning across the hillside. The broken branches on the pines were fresh, with green wood showing at the breaks. Something large had pushed through here recently, deliberately breaking obstacles rather than going around them. That's when I heard it, a low, guttural vocalization from deeper in the trees, followed by an answering call from a different direction. They were communicating, and they knew I was here. My rational brain told me to turn back, but I pushed forward into the grove, ducking under low branches. About 30 feet in, I entered a small clearing. The Bigfoot was there. The Bigfoot stood on the far side of the clearing, partially obscured by trees, but unmistakably present. The Bigfoot was even larger up close, easily 8 feet tall, with massive shoulders and chest covered in dark brown fur that appeared almost black in the shadows. The Bigfoot's face showed a flat nose, heavy brow ridge, and dark eyes that locked onto mine with startling intelligence. For several seconds, we simply stared at each other. The Bigfoot made no aggressive moves, just watched me with wary curiosity. The Bigfoot's chest rose and fell with deep, measured breaths. I could see muscles moving beneath the Bigfoot's fur. The Bigfoot's hands were enormous, hanging at the Bigfoot's sides with fingers slightly curled. My camera was still running, pointed at the ground. I slowly, carefully raised it, praying the Bigfoot wouldn't charge. The Bigfoot's eyes followed the movement, but the Bigfoot didn't react otherwise. Then the Bigfoot began to move, circling slowly around the edge of the clearing. The Bigfoot's movement was fluid and powerful, each step deliberate and nearly silent despite the Bigfoot's massive size. The Bigfoot was repositioning, putting more trees between us, creating an escape route. I stood perfectly still, barely breathing, keeping the camera trained on the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot paused behind a large pine, only the Bigfoot's head and shoulders visible now. We had another moment of locked eye contact, and I had the strangest sensation that the Bigfoot was assessing me, deciding what to do about this human intruder. Then, from somewhere deeper in the forest, a howl erupted. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard, a long, drawn-out vocalization that started low and rose in pitch, echoing through the mountains. It was answered by another call, this one closer from a different direction. The Bigfoot in front of me reacted immediately. The Bigfoot's head snapped toward the sound, and the Bigfoot let out a responding call, a deep, whooping bark that I felt vibrating in my chest. Then the Bigfoot moved with explosive speed, crashing through the underbrush and disappearing into the forest in seconds. I stood alone in the clearing, my entire body shaking, as more calls echoed around me from multiple directions. There wasn't just one Bigfoot in these mountains. There were several, and they were communicating. I had stumbled into their territory, and they knew I was here. Panic finally overrode everything else. I turned and ran, crashing back through the pine grove toward open ground. Branches whipped my face and grabbed at my clothes, but I didn't slow down. Behind me, I heard movement in the forest, the sound of something large moving parallel to my path. I burst out of the trees onto the rocky slope and half ran, half slid downhill, my feet skidding on loose stones. I risked a glance over my shoulder and saw movement in the tree line, multiple dark shapes shifting between trunks. They were following me, several Bigfoot creatures pacing my panicked flight down the mountain. The slope was treacherous and I fell twice, scraping my hands and knees on rocks but scrambling back up immediately. My lungs burned from the altitude and exertion, and my legs felt like rubber, but terror kept me moving. The Bigfoot vocalizations continued, echoing around the mountainside, calls and responses from multiple directions. As I reached more level ground and could see the railway tracks in the distance, I realized the Bigfoot calls had stopped. I slowed to a stumbling jog and looked back. The slopes above me appeared empty, but I knew they were up there, watching me retreat from their domain. They had made their point. I was not welcome, and I was lucky they had chosen intimidation over aggression. I reached the train platform at Needleton with 20 minutes to spare before the afternoon train arrived. I collapsed onto a bench, trembling, and checked my camera with shaking hands. The video was there, all of it. The Bigfoot in the clearing, the circling movement, even some of the audio of those incredible vocalizations. When the train finally arrived, I practically ran to board it. As we pulled away and began the journey back to Durango, I kept my face pressed to the window, watching the mountains recede, half expecting to see Bigfoot shapes on the ridgelines. That night in my Durango hotel room, I backed up the video files to multiple devices. I must have watched the footage 100 times, still unable to fully process what I had experienced. The evidence was undeniable. The video showed a massive bipedal creature, clearly not human, not a bear, moving through the forest with purpose and intelligence. The footprint photographs were even more compelling, perfect impressions showing anatomical details that no hoaxer could have faked in such a remote location. A wildlife biologist friend was stumped, unable to identify the creature from known species. I also learned that the Weminuche Wilderness, where I had my encounter, is one of the largest roadless areas in Colorado, covering over 500,000 acres of rugged, largely unexplored mountain terrain. If Bigfoot creatures exist anywhere in the state, this would be ideal habitat, remote, with abundant water and very limited human presence. What struck me most was how many other people had similar experiences in Colorado's high country. Reports going back decades described large bipedal creatures in the San Juan Mountains, vocalizations that matched what I had heard, and enormous tracks found by hunters and hikers. I came to understand how fortunate I was that my encounter ended without violence. Everything I've read suggests that Bigfoot creatures are generally non-aggressive unless threatened. I had unknowingly wandered into what was likely a family group's territory. And rather than attack, they chose to warn me off. The decision to follow me and ensure I left probably saved my life. Looking back, I recognize how reckless my decision to leave the train was. I put myself in serious danger, both from the Bigfoot creatures and from the harsh mountain environment itself. I was unprepared for backcountry travel, had no communication device, and didn't tell anyone where I was going. At the same time, I can't fully regret the decision. I witnessed something that most people will never see, something that challenges our understanding of what creatures share our world. The Bigfoot I encountered were real, living beings, not myths or folklore. I've learned to respect the wilderness in a way I never did before. These mountains belong to the creatures that inhabit them, and humans are guests, not conquerors. The Bigfoot allowed me to leave their territory unharmed, a mercy I didn't fully appreciate at the time. The experience has fundamentally changed how I view the natural world. We assume we know everything that exists on this planet, but the Earth is vast, and remote areas like the Weminuche Wilderness remain largely unexplored. If Bigfoot can remain hidden in such places, what else might be out there living in the margins of the known world? It's been 6 months since my encounter on the mountain above Needleton. I still have nightmares sometimes, waking up with my heart pounding as I relive those moments in the pine grove, staring into the intelligent eyes of a creature that shouldn't exist but does. I've returned to Colorado twice since then, but I've stayed on the train, content to watch the mountains roll past from the safety of my seat. I scan the hillsides as we pass through that same stretch of track, hoping for another glimpse, but also relieved when I see nothing unusual. I encourage anyone reading this who has had their own Bigfoot encounter to share their story. Your account adds to the body of evidence that something extraordinary inhabits our remaining wild places. And if you're planning your own adventure into Bigfoot country, please learn from my mistakes. Go prepared, travel with others, let people know your plans, and respect the environment and its inhabitants. The Bigfoot are out there, I'm absolutely certain of that now, but they deserve their privacy and their territory. My encounter lasted perhaps 15 minutes. 15 minutes that changed my entire worldview. I saw Bigfoot, multiple Bigfoot actually, and I have the evidence to prove it. I know what I saw, I know what I experienced, and I know that the Colorado mountains hide secrets we're only beginning to glimpse. The Bigfoot are real, they're out there, and they're magnificent. On July 23rd, my trail camera captured 15 seconds of footage that changed everything I thought I knew about these woods. A massive Bigfoot walked directly past my camera, and the audio recorded something even more disturbing. Guttural vocalizations that sounded like the Bigfoot was speaking some kind of ape language. I've spent 6 months trying to understand what I captured, and I need help. I check my trail cameras every 2 weeks during summer months. I have 8 cameras positioned across 400 acres of private land in the Cascade foothills of northern Washington, mostly monitoring game trails for deer and elk patterns. This particular camera sits on my best trail, a narrow corridor between 2 ridges where animals funnel through on their way to a creek below. When I pulled the SD card on July 25th and started reviewing footage on my laptop, I almost skipped past what would become the most important 15 seconds I've ever recorded. The timestamp showed 3:47 a.m. on July 23rd. The first frame made me pause, a massive dark figure walking upright down the trail, completely filling the frame. My first thought was trespasser. Someone was on my property in the middle of the night. But as the clip played, I realized this was no human. The Bigfoot moved with a powerful, fluid stride that covered ground incredibly fast. The Bigfoot was enormous, easily 7 or 8 feet tall, with shoulders so broad the Bigfoot barely fit in the camera's field of view. The Bigfoot's entire body was covered in dark brown fur. What struck me immediately was how the Bigfoot moved. The Bigfoot's arms swung naturally at the Bigfoot's sides with each step, just like a human walks, but the Bigfoot's stride was much longer. The Bigfoot's head sat low on the Bigfoot's shoulders with minimal neck visible, giving the Bigfoot a hunched but powerful appearance. The Bigfoot wasn't running or acting startled. The Bigfoot was simply walking down the trail like the Bigfoot owned it. I watched the clip 20 times that first night, analyzing every frame. The Bigfoot's legs showed massive muscle definition even through the fur. The Bigfoot's hands hung down past where a human's would, with fingers that appeared remarkably long. At one point, the Bigfoot turned the Bigfoot's head slightly toward the camera, and I could see the profile of the Bigfoot's face, a flat, ape-like nose and a pronounced brow ridge. But the footage was just the beginning. When I turned up the volume and listened carefully, I heard something that made my blood run cold. The audio on my trail cameras isn't great quality. They're designed primarily for silent video capture, but they do record sound. As I replayed the footage with headphones on, I heard low, guttural sounds that synchronized with the Bigfoot's movement down the trail. The Bigfoot was making vocalizations, not random grunts or heavy breathing, but deliberate sounds that had rhythm and variation. The Bigfoot would grunt once, pause, then make two shorter grunts, then a longer, lower vocalization that almost sounded like the Bigfoot was forming words. The pattern repeated 3 times during the 15-second clip. I'm an experienced hunter. I know what elk sound like, what bears sound like, what every animal in these woods sounds like. This was different. The vocalizations had an intentional quality, like the Bigfoot was talking to itself or communicating with something else in the forest that my camera couldn't see. The grunts were deep and resonant, coming from something with a massive chest cavity. They had an almost human quality to them, but rougher, more primal. I've since played this audio for several people, and everyone agrees. It doesn't match any known animal in Washington. One particular vocalization at the 8-second mark is the most disturbing. The Bigfoot pauses mid-stride and makes a series of sounds, a low grunt, then one what sounds like hoo-hoo-ha, then a longer vocalization that rises in pitch at the end, almost like the Bigfoot is asking a question. I've listened to that segment hundreds of times, and I swear the Bigfoot is speaking some kind of language. After that first night of watching the footage obsessively, I knew I had to understand what I'd captured. The next morning, I drove back to the trail camera location with my rifle, expecting to find tracks or other evidence. I found nothing. The trail is mostly rocky with patches of dirt, but any area soft enough to hold a print showed only deer tracks. I left the camera in place, hoping to capture more footage. I checked it 3 days later. Nothing unusual, just deer and a coyote. I checked again a week later, still nothing. The Bigfoot had passed through once and apparently never returned, at least not while the camera was recording. Over the next 6 weeks, I repositioned cameras along different trails, trying to cover more ground. I set up cameras near the creek where the Bigfoot seemed to be heading. I placed cameras on higher ridges overlooking the valley. I even bought 3 additional cameras to expand my coverage. I captured thousands of clips of normal wildlife: deer, elk, bears, coyotes, raccoons, even a mountain lion once. But no Bigfoot. I started spending more time in the woods, hiking the trails at different times of day, looking for any sign of what I'd recorded. I found nothing concrete. A few trees with bark scratched off at heights of 7 or 8 feet. But that could be bears, some broken branches in areas where game trails intersect, but again, inconclusive. What frustrated me most was the complete absence of tracks. In all my wandering, I never found a single clear footprint that could belong to a Bigfoot. Either the Bigfoot moved exclusively on rocky ground, or the Bigfoot was incredibly careful about where it stepped, or I was somehow missing the evidence. About 2 months after capturing the original footage, something else started happening. I began hearing vocalizations while I was actually in the woods, not every time, but often enough that I couldn't dismiss them as coincidence or imagination. The first time was in early September, just before dawn. I was sitting in my tree stand about a mile from where the trail camera had captured the Bigfoot. I heard a distant howl that started low and rose in pitch, echoing across the valley. It wasn't a coyote or wolf. We don't have wolves this far south in the Cascades. It wasn't an elk bugle either, which I've heard thousands of times. This was something else, something that made the hair on my neck stand up. The howl was answered by another call from a different direction, this one closer. Then silence. I sat in that tree stand for 3 more hours and heard nothing else unusual, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Over the following months, I heard similar vocalizations on 4 more occasions. Each time, they came from different locations in the forest. Sometimes just one howl or series of grunts. Sometimes what sounded like 2 creatures calling back and forth to each other. The sounds always came early in the morning or at dusk, never in the middle of the day. I started bringing a portable audio recorder with me every time I entered the woods. I managed to capture 2 recordings of the vocalizations, though the quality isn't as good as I'd hoped. The distance and interference from wind and other forest sounds make them hard to analyze, but they're there on the recordings, clear evidence that something is making these sounds regularly in my forest. After 6 months of investigation, I've come to believe there's a population of Bigfoot creatures living in these mountains. Not just one individual, but multiple creatures that communicate with each other using vocalizations. The trail camera footage shows one Bigfoot clearly, and the audio captures the Bigfoot's grunts and language-like sounds. The subsequent vocalizations I've heard and recorded suggest there are more of them out there. What fascinates and disturbs me is the intelligence these vocalizations suggest. These aren't random animal sounds. The Bigfoot creatures seem to be communicating complex information, location, warnings, possibly even coordination of movement through the forest. The way the calls are answered from different directions implies they're tracking each other's positions and staying in contact. I've researched Bigfoot vocalizations online and found numerous similar recordings from across the Pacific Northwest. The patterns match what I've captured. The low grunts, the howls that rise in pitch, the call and response behavior between multiple individuals. Other researchers have documented the same ape-like language quality in the sounds, suggesting Bigfoot creatures have a sophisticated communication system. What I still don't understand is why I only captured that one clear footage. In 6 months of intensive camera coverage, that single 15-second clip is all I have. Either the Bigfoot learned where my cameras are positioned and avoids them, or that particular Bigfoot was just passing through the area and hasn't returned. Both possibilities are unsettling. The first suggests remarkable intelligence and awareness. The second suggests these creatures are highly mobile and cover vast territories. I'm not a Bigfoot researcher or enthusiast. I'm a hunter who spent 3 decades in these woods and thought I understood everything that lived here. This footage and these vocalizations have completely changed my perspective. Something large, intelligent, and unknown shares these mountains with us. I'm sharing this because I need help understanding what I've documented. I've studied the footage frame by frame. I've analyzed the audio. I've spent hundreds of hours in the field looking for more evidence. But I'm just one person with limited resources and expertise. If anyone out there has experience with Bigfoot vocalizations, I'd appreciate guidance on what I'm hearing. Are these territorial calls, communication between family members, warning sounds? The language-like quality of the grunts and howls suggests they're conveying specific information, but I have no idea how to interpret it. I'd also value input on research strategies. How do I find these creatures again? How do I capture better footage? Should I be using audio recorders instead of focusing on trail cameras? Are there specific times of year when Bigfoot activity increases? My plan is to continue monitoring the forest, but I'm changing my approach. Instead of just relying on trail cameras, I'm investing in better audio recording equipment. I want to capture more vocalizations and build a catalog of the different sounds these Bigfoot creatures make. I'm also going to start documenting any physical evidence I find more systematically. The scratched trees, the broken branches, anything that might indicate Bigfoot presence. I'm considering inviting other researchers to my property, though I'm hesitant because I value the privacy and seclusion of this land. But if experienced Bigfoot investigators could help me understand what I've documented, it might be worth it. What I know for certain is that I'll never hear these woods the same way again. Every distant howl, every unexplained grunt, every moment of unusual silence makes me wonder if the Bigfoot creatures are nearby, watching me the way I'm trying to watch them. The 15 seconds of trail camera footage I captured in July showed me something extraordinary. The Bigfoot walked past my camera speaking its ape-like language, making vocalizations that suggest intelligence and communication. Somewhere in my forest, possibly watching me right now as I write this, are creatures we don't fully understand. And I need help figuring out exactly what they are and what they're trying to say. If you've had similar experiences with Bigfoot vocalizations or have expertise in analyzing this kind of evidence, please reach out. I'm not looking for fame or attention. I'm looking for answers about what lives in my forest and what those strange grunts and language-like sounds actually mean. On May 18, 2025, my trail camera captured footage of a Bigfoot at 4:23 a.m. The creature was massive, muscular, and walked with terrifying confidence through my property. I made the mistake of going back the next night to get better footage. I'm writing this as a warning. Do not go looking for these creatures. What I encountered was a primal apex predator with intelligence far beyond what I imagined. And I only survived because it allowed me to leave. I check my trail cameras every Sunday morning. I run 3 cameras on my property in eastern Kentucky, mostly to monitor deer and potential trespassers. The cameras are basic models that trigger on motion, capturing 15-second video clips with infrared night vision. When I pulled the SD card from my main camera on Sunday, May 18th, and started reviewing the week's footage on my truck's laptop, I almost dropped the computer. The timestamp showed 4:23 a.m. that very morning, just hours before I arrived. What I saw made my blood run cold. A massive Bigfoot walked directly down the game trail, moving straight toward the camera. The creature was enormous, easily 7.5 to 8 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they filled the entire frame. The Bigfoot's body was covered in light-colored fur that appeared almost white in the infrared lighting, giving the creature a ghostly, otherworldly appearance. What struck me immediately was how the Bigfoot moved. This wasn't some lumbering beast. The Bigfoot walked with purpose and power, each stride covering incredible ground. The Bigfoot's arms swung naturally at the Bigfoot's sides, and the Bigfoot's posture was upright, almost human-like, but far more powerful. The Bigfoot's legs showed massive muscle definition even through the fur, and the Bigfoot's chest was barrel-shaped, suggesting incredible lung capacity and strength. In the clearest frames, I could see the Bigfoot's face. The Bigfoot had a flat, ape-like nose, a heavy brow ridge, and eyes that seemed to look directly at the camera. Not past it, at it. The Bigfoot knew the camera was there. The Bigfoot's mouth hung slightly open, and I could see what appeared to be large teeth. The Bigfoot's head sat low on the Bigfoot's shoulders with minimal visible neck, giving the Bigfoot a hunched but intimidating profile. The most disturbing part came at the 8-second mark. The Bigfoot paused mid-stride and turned the Bigfoot's head fully toward the camera. For 3 full seconds, the Bigfoot stared directly at the lens. The Bigfoot's expression was impossible to read. Was the Bigfoot curious, annoyed, threatening? Then the Bigfoot continued walking, passing so close to the camera that the final frames showed just the Bigfoot's massive torso filling the screen before the Bigfoot disappeared from view. I watched the clip 20 times that first hour. The Bigfoot's size was staggering. The Bigfoot's build suggested raw power, thick arms, massive thighs, hands that hung past where humans would end. But what terrified me most was the intelligence in those eyes during that 3-second stare. This wasn't just an animal. This was something that understood it was being watched and didn't care. By Sunday afternoon, I had convinced myself I needed better footage. The trail camera clip was compelling but grainy and brief. If I could get clear video or photographs, this could be the evidence that finally proved Bigfoot exists. I spent hours planning my return to that exact spot. My plan was simple. I would return Monday night, May 19th, and set up at the location around 3:30 a.m., an hour before the Bigfoot had appeared on camera. I would bring my high-quality video camera, a powerful flashlight, and my rifle for protection. I would hide about 30 yards from the trail and wait. If the Bigfoot used the same route at the same time, I would capture clear footage. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was. I thought I was hunting the Bigfoot. I didn't understand that the Bigfoot was already aware of me, and that I was walking into the creature's territory on the creature's terms. Monday night, I left my house at 2:45 a.m. The drive to my property took 20 minutes, and I parked my truck a quarter-mile away to avoid alerting anything to my presence. I hiked in using only a dim red flashlight, moving as quietly as possible through the forest. By 3:35 a.m., I was positioned behind a large oak tree with a clear view of the game trail where the Bigfoot had walked. The forest was eerily silent. No insects, no birds, nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing and the occasional rustle of leaves in the slight breeze. I set up my video camera on a small tripod, checked that my rifle safety was off, and waited. At 4:15 a.m., 8 minutes before the Bigfoot had appeared on the trail camera, I heard it. A low, guttural vocalization from somewhere behind me. Not on the trail, behind me. The sound was deep and resonant like nothing I had ever heard. It wasn't a howl or a scream. It was almost like a very low, rumbling grunt that I felt in my chest as much as heard. My body went rigid. The Bigfoot wasn't on the trail. The Bigfoot was in the forest behind me, between me and my truck. I slowly turned my head, scanning the darkness with just my eyes, too terrified to move more than that. Another vocalization, this time from my right, different tone, different location. There were at least 2 of them. They were communicating, and they knew exactly where I was. I realized with sickening clarity that the Bigfoot on the trail camera hadn't been alone. The Bigfoot had been walking a patrol route, and I had positioned myself directly in the middle of their territory. They had known I was there from the moment I entered the forest. They had been watching me for the past 40 minutes as I sat behind that oak tree like an idiot, thinking I was hidden. A third vocalization, this one much closer, maybe 20 yards to my left. The sound was different this time, more aggressive, with a rising pitch at the end that sounded almost like a question or a challenge. I heard heavy footfalls, branches breaking, something large moving through the underbrush with deliberate noise. They weren't trying to be quiet anymore. They were letting me know they were there. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my rifle. I abandoned the camera on its tripod and slowly stood up, pressing my back against the oak tree. I turned on my powerful flashlight and swept it across the forest. The beam caught it about 15 yards away, standing between 2 trees. A massive Bigfoot, at least as large as the one from the trail camera footage, possibly larger. The Bigfoot's fur was darker than the one in the video, appearing brownish gray in my flashlight beam. The Bigfoot stood completely still, arms hanging at the Bigfoot's sides, staring directly at me. The Bigfoot's eyes reflected the light, not like a deer's eyes or a bear's, but with an unsettling intelligence behind them. The Bigfoot didn't flinch or look away. The Bigfoot just stared, studying me. I could see the Bigfoot's chest rising and falling with slow, measured breaths. The Bigfoot's face showed that same flat nose and heavy brow, but up close and in my light, I could see more detail. The texture of the Bigfoot's skin around the nose and eyes, the way the Bigfoot's jaw muscles tensed. Behind me, I heard footsteps, another Bigfoot approaching from the rear. I was surrounded. I spun around, flashlight sweeping wildly, and caught a glimpse of a second massive figure before it stepped behind a tree, deliberately staying just out of clear view. The first Bigfoot made a sound, a sharp barking grunt that made me jump. It was answered immediately by the one behind me, then by a third from farther in the forest. They were coordinating. The vocalizations had rhythm and pattern like language. They were discussing what to do about me. I made my decision. I couldn't fight them. I couldn't outrun them. My only chance was to leave their territory immediately and hope they would let me go. I started backing away slowly, keeping my flashlight moving between the visible Bigfoot in front of me and the sounds behind me. I held my rifle up but didn't aim it. Some instinct told me that pointing the weapon at them would be a fatal mistake. The Bigfoot in front took one step forward, just one. It was a message. I'm faster than you. I'm stronger than you. I could reach you before you could react. The Bigfoot's movement was fluid and powerful, covering several feet in that single step. The Bigfoot's leg muscles rippled under the fur, and I could see the Bigfoot's massive foot, easily 18 inches long, press into the forest floor. I kept backing up, moving as quickly as I dared without running. Running would trigger a chase response, I was certain of it. These were predators, apex predators that understood hunting. Every instinct I had screamed that running would end with me being caught. For the next 15 minutes, they paced me. I would move 20 yards, and I would hear them moving parallel to me, keeping distance but maintaining presence. They were herding me, guiding me back toward where I had parked my truck. Every time I deviated from the most direct path, I would hear a vocalization from the direction they didn't want me to go, pushing me back on course. I finally broke into a run for the last 100 yards when I saw my truck. I expected them to chase, to attack, to stop me. They didn't. When I reached the truck and spun around, flashlight beam sweeping the forest, I saw nothing. They had vanished, but I could feel them watching me from the darkness. I threw my rifle in the truck bed, jumped in the cab, and drove away faster than I've ever driven on that dirt road. My hands shook so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I left my $800 video camera in the forest. I left my pack. I left everything except my rifle and flashlight. I've spent the past weeks thinking about that night, analyzing what happened and what it means. Several things are absolutely clear to me now. First, these Bigfoot creatures are far more intelligent than anyone realizes. They didn't attack me because they chose not to. They could have easily killed me at any point during that night. Instead, they assessed the situation, communicated with each other, and made a calculated decision to escort me out of their territory. That level of intelligence is terrifying. Second, they knew about the trail camera. The Bigfoot in my footage looked directly at it, aware it was being recorded. They understand human technology to some degree. When I came back the next night, they were waiting for me. They anticipated that I would return. That suggests planning, memory, and tactical thinking. Third, the vocalizations are definitely language. The patterns, the call and response, the way they use sounds to coordinate their movements. That wasn't random animal noise. They were communicating complex information, my location, my movements, what action to take. They have a sophisticated communication system. Finally, these creatures are apex predators in their environment. The way they moved, the coordination between multiple individuals, the intimidation tactics, these are hunting behaviors from creatures at the top of the food chain. They're not shy forest animals hiding from humans. They're territorial predators who allow humans to pass through only when they choose to allow it. I'm sharing this story and the trail camera footage because people need to understand what's really out there. If you capture Bigfoot on your trail camera, do not go looking for it. Do not try to get better footage. Do not go back to that location at night. These creatures are not the gentle forest giants that some researchers claim. They're powerful, intelligent, and territorial. They hunt cooperatively, communicate with sophisticated vocalizations, and can easily kill a human if they choose to. The only reason I'm alive to write this is because they decided to let me leave. The trail camera footage I captured shows a creature walking confidently through its territory at 4:23 a.m., aware of the camera, unconcerned about being recorded. That confidence should tell you everything you need to know. These Bigfoot creatures aren't hiding from us because they're afraid. They're avoiding contact because they choose to avoid it. But when you enter their territory, when you threaten them or intrude on their space, they will respond, and you will not be in control of that encounter. I will never return to that section of my property at night. I've removed all my trail cameras from that area. I want nothing to do with whatever lives in those woods. The footage I captured is compelling evidence that Bigfoot exists in eastern Kentucky, but it's not worth my life to gather more. If you see a Bigfoot on your trail camera, be grateful for the glimpse and leave it at that. Don't make the mistake I made. Don't go looking for something that already knows exactly where you are. I escaped that night only because they allowed it. And I will never forget the feeling of being surrounded by creatures far more powerful and intelligent than I am, knowing that my survival was entirely in their hands. The Bigfoot in my footage walked past that camera at 4:23 a.m. on May 18, 2025. 24 hours later, I learned that the Bigfoot and its family were always watching, always aware, and always in control. That's a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my life, and I hope by sharing this, I can prevent others from learning it the same way I did.
See what I'm saying?
My son and I went hiking in the Smoky Mountains last September, just a simple father-son trip to a rented cabin. We filmed what we thought was an ape clinging to a tree trunk, except there are no apes in Tennessee forests. We realized too late that we had filmed a Bigfoot infant, and as darkness fell, the parents came looking for us. What happened that night in the cabin still haunts both of us. We had rented a small cabin deep in the Smoky Mountains for a long weekend, just me and my 12-year-old son, Jake. The cabin was remote, accessible only by a rough dirt road surrounded by dense forest on all sides. It was exactly what we wanted: total isolation, quality time together, and a chance to explore the wilderness. On our second day, Saturday afternoon, around 3:30 p.m., we decided to hike a trail that looped through the forest about 2 miles from the cabin. The weather was perfect, the forest was beautiful with early fall colors just starting, and Jake was excited to be out in nature. He's always been fascinated by wildlife, constantly pointing out birds and asking questions about animal tracks. About 40 minutes into our hike, Jake suddenly grabbed my arm and whispered urgently. He was staring up at a large pine tree about 30 yards off the trail. I looked where he was pointing and my breath caught. There was something clinging to the trunk, maybe 20 feet up. At first glance, I thought it might be a bear cub, but the way it gripped the tree was wrong. Its hands and feet were wrong. The proportions were wrong. I pulled out my phone and started recording video, zooming in as much as I could. The creature was covered in dark fur, almost black, with a lighter patch on its chest. It clung to the tree trunk with what looked like human-like hands and feet, not paws. The creature's head was turned slightly away from us, but I could see its profile, a flat face, not a snout. The creature appeared to be watching something in the forest, completely unaware of us. Jake whispered, "Dad, what is that? It looks like a monkey." I didn't answer right away because I was trying to process what I was seeing. This was the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. There are no monkeys here. There are no apes. Black bears, yes, but this was no bear. The way the creature's arms wrapped around the tree, the way its legs bent, the way it shifted its weight, this was a primate, but not any primate that should exist in North America. I recorded about 15 seconds of footage before the creature suddenly turned its head and looked directly at us. Even from 30 yards away, I could see its face clearly in my phone's zoom. Large eyes, a flat nose, a heavy brow. The creature's expression changed, alert, startled, maybe frightened. Then the creature made a sound, a high-pitched vocalization that was part screech, part grunt, unlike anything I'd ever heard from any animal. That's when everything clicked in my mind. This wasn't a monkey, this was a young Bigfoot, a Bigfoot infant or juvenile, and I had just filmed it. We need to go. Now. I grabbed Jake's hand and pulled him back toward the trail. He started to protest, wanting to watch the creature longer, but something in my voice must have conveyed the urgency because he stopped arguing and followed me. As we hurried back down the trail toward the cabin, my mind was racing. If that was a young Bigfoot, where were the parents? Adult Bigfoot are described as being 7 to 9 feet tall, incredibly strong, and fiercely protective. We had just filmed their offspring, gotten way too close, and that creature had vocalized, probably calling for help or warning its parents about us. About 5 minutes into our rapid hike back, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A response vocalization from somewhere deeper in the forest, much louder and much deeper than the sound the young Bigfoot had made. It was a booming howl that echoed through the trees. Then another response from a different direction, slightly different tone. 2 adults communicating, and they sounded big. "Dad, what was that?" Jake's voice was shaking now. He had realized something was wrong. "Keep moving, don't run, but walk fast. We need to get back to the cabin." I tried to keep my voice calm, but inside I was terrified. We were still over a mile from the cabin, and whatever had made those sounds was out there in the forest, probably tracking us. For the next 20 minutes, we power walked that trail, constantly looking over our shoulders. I kept hearing sounds in the forest, branches breaking, heavy footfalls, movement paralleling our path. Something large was following us, staying just out of sight in the dense trees. Every time I thought I saw a shape or movement, it would vanish behind vegetation. We finally burst out of the trail onto the dirt road leading to our cabin. It was 4:45 p.m. The sun was still up, but it would be setting in less than 2 hours. We practically ran the last quarter mile to the cabin, got inside, and I immediately locked the door. Jake was scared, but trying to be brave. "Dad, was that really a Bigfoot baby? Are there adult Bigfoot out there?" I couldn't lie to him. I showed him the video footage I'd captured, and we watched it together on my phone. There was no question that creature in the tree was not a known animal. It was too human-like, too intelligent-looking, and it was clinging to that tree trunk in a way that no bear or other native animal could manage. I think we accidentally got too close to a young Bigfoot, and I think the parents know we were there, I told him honestly. We need to stay inside tonight and leave first thing in the morning. I checked all the windows and doors, making sure everything was locked. The cabin was sturdy, log construction with solid doors and windows, but I had no idea if that would matter against something as strong as an adult Bigfoot. I regretted not bringing my rifle, but this was supposed to be a peaceful hiking trip. As the sun set around 6:30 p.m., we made dinner and tried to act normal, but both of us kept glancing at the windows. The cabin had electricity, so I turned on every light inside and the porch light outside. Maybe light would keep them away. Maybe it would make them more aggressive. I had no idea. The first sound came at 7:45 p.m., about 15 minutes after full darkness had fallen. Heavy footsteps on the porch, not the sound of a bear shuffling around. These were bipedal footsteps, deliberate and heavy. Something large was walking on the wooden porch, and I could feel the vibrations through the cabin floor. Jake grabbed my arm, his eyes wide with fear. We sat frozen on the couch as the footsteps moved from one end of the porch to the other, then stopped at the front door. Through the window beside the door, I could see a massive shadow blocking the porch light. Something was standing right there, just feet away from us, separated only by a locked wooden door. Then came a sound that made my skin crawl. Heavy breathing, deep and slow, right outside the door. Whatever was out there was sniffing, investigating. Then a grunt, low and guttural, that vibrated through the walls. This was no baby Bigfoot. This was something enormous. The shadow moved away from the door, and the footsteps circled the cabin. I could track its movement by sound, around the side, past the bedroom windows, behind the cabin, back around the other side. It was checking every window, every door, testing the perimeter. Jake buried his face against my shoulder, trying not to cry. "It's okay," I whispered, knowing it probably wasn't. "The cabin is strong. We're safe inside." But I didn't feel safe. I felt like prey being sized up by a predator. Around 8:30 p.m., the second one arrived. I heard the footsteps of another massive creature approaching the cabin, and then vocalizations between the two. They were communicating, making sounds that range from low grunts to higher-pitched whoops. The sounds had rhythm and pattern. They were definitely language, not random animal noises. For the next hour, both creatures circled the cabin, occasionally stopping at windows or doors. I kept Jake away from the windows, both of us huddled on the couch in the center of the main room. At one point, something slapped the side of the cabin with tremendous force, making the entire structure shake. Jake yelped in fear, and I pulled him closer. Then came the worst moment of the night. Around 9:45 p.m., one of the creatures climbed onto the roof. I heard the heavy thuds as it pulled itself up, then the sound of enormous weight moving across the roof above us. The ceiling boards creaked ominously. Something that had to weigh at least 600 pounds was walking around on top of our cabin. Jake was crying now, quietly, trying to be brave but terrified out of his mind. I was terrified too, but I had to hold it together for him. "They're just investigating," I whispered. "They're trying to figure out who we are and what we're doing here. They're not breaking in. That's a good sign." But I wasn't sure I believed my own words. The creature on the roof moved to the edge and made a sound that was definitely directed at us, a series of loud barks and grunts that sounded aggressive and territorial. Then it dropped back down to the ground with a heavy thud that shook the cabin. From 10 p.m. until around 3 a.m., the harassment continued in waves. Sometimes both creatures would be right outside the cabin, vocalizing to each other and occasionally slapping the walls or scratching at the windows. Other times there would be long periods of silence that were almost worse because we didn't know where they were or what they were doing. Around midnight, I heard a sound that made my heart sink. The young Bigfoot was there too. I heard its higher-pitched vocalizations mixing with the deeper calls of the adults. The whole family had come. They had followed us back to the cabin, and now they were outside, probably trying to decide what to do about the humans who had intruded on their territory and filmed their offspring. I had turned off most of the lights inside, leaving only the porch light on, hoping that not seeing us might calm them down. Jake and I sat in the dark, listening to the sounds outside. At one point, I heard what sounded like the adults teaching the young one. Demonstrative vocalizations followed by the young Bigfoot attempting to mimic them. It would have been fascinating under any other circumstances. Tonight, it was terrifying. Around 2 a.m., Jake finally fell asleep from exhaustion, his head on my lap. I stayed awake, listening to every sound, watching the shadows moving past the windows. The creature seemed less aggressive now, more curious. They would approach the cabin, vocalize softly, then move away. It was almost like they were keeping watch rather than planning an attack. The vocalizations finally stopped around 3:30 a.m. I heard the heavy footsteps moving away from the cabin, heading back into the forest. I waited another hour, listening to the silence, before I allowed myself to hope they were gone. As dawn broke around 6 a.m., I carefully looked out the windows. The forest was quiet and empty. I opened the front door cautiously and checked the porch. There were muddy prints on the wooden boards, enormous footprints, at least 18 inches long, with clear toe impressions. The Bigfoot family had definitely been there, and the evidence proved I hadn't imagined it. I woke Jake gently and told him we were leaving immediately. We threw everything into the car in record time, not bothering to clean the cabin or pack carefully. We just wanted out. As we drove down that dirt road toward civilization, I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see massive figures following us. I've spent months thinking about that night, analyzing what happened and trying to understand the Bigfoot family's behavior. The adult Bigfoot could have broken into the cabin if they wanted to. They could have smashed through a window or kicked in a door. They were clearly strong enough, but they didn't. They circled, investigated, vocalized, and ultimately left us alone. I think they were doing several things. First, they were checking on the young one, making sure it was safe after we had approached it. Second, they were warning us, making it clear that we had entered their territory and they knew where we were. The harassment, the circling, the sounds, all of it was intimidation, a message that we were being watched and we needed to leave. But I also think they were curious. The way they investigated the cabin, the vocalizations that seemed more inquisitive than aggressive in the later hours, they were trying to understand us the same way we were trying to understand them. The difference was they had the power and control in that situation. They decided when to approach and when to leave. We were entirely at their mercy. The young Bigfoot in the tree was much smaller than the legendary 8 or 9 foot adult Bigfoot, probably only 4 to 5 feet tall, which is why I initially thought it might be a bear cub or monkey. But those adults outside our cabin were definitely the size described in Bigfoot reports, and their presence was absolutely terrifying. I'm sharing this story and the footage of the young Bigfoot because people need to understand what can happen when you encounter these creatures in the wild. We didn't go looking for Bigfoot. We were just hiking, and we stumbled upon what was probably a juvenile Bigfoot practicing tree climbing or watching the forest. But that innocent encounter led to hours of terror as the parents tracked us back to our cabin and spent the night investigating us, warning us, and making sure we understood we had crossed a line. If you film a Bigfoot, especially a young one, you need to understand that you've just documented someone's child, and the parents know what you've done. Were they planning to harm us? I don't think so. If they wanted to hurt us, they could have easily done it. Were they curious about us? Probably. But more than anything, I think they were warning us to leave their territory and never come back. And that's exactly what we did. We never returned to that cabin, and we never went back to that area of the Smoky Mountains. The footage I captured shows clear evidence of a primate that shouldn't exist in Tennessee. A young Bigfoot clinging to a tree trunk, watching the forest with intelligent eyes. But that footage came with a price. A night of absolute terror that my son and I will never forget. If you encounter a Bigfoot, especially a young one, my advice is simple. Leave immediately. Don't film it. Don't watch it. Just get as far away as possible before the parents come looking for you.